Hello, and welcome to The Nose. Today we are going to look at two different television series, which, although very different, do look also at the chaos and dysfunction that sometimes attend the business of running a small business. They're kind of both from more or less the center of the continent. One's from Toronto, the other's set in Chicago. They also tell, I think, the stories of ethnic enclaves and the ways some of those value sets play out in running a small business. And they're also very much the story of people who intermingle family and business. So later on the show, we will talk about Kim's Convenience, the latter of those two shows. It's the one that's set in Toronto. We're going to begin with The Bear. The Bear is new. Hulu dropped all 8 episodes at once, I believe. And to say that it is a critical success, I think would be kind of understating it. I don't really put much stock in Rotten Tomatoes, but if you do, it has a 100% critics rating and a 97% audience rating. I think maybe more significantly, the people who are really giving it tremendous comments just among audience members are people who have worked in the restaurant business all their lives and have been waiting for someone to show something like this. It's the story of a young man, Carmy, who takes over the restaurant that his brother, Mikey, was running up until the moment that Mikey killed himself. That's not a spoiler. It's like you hear the first episode. And so he is stepping in from an incredibly successful chef career in New York, an award-winning leader of the pack of young chefs kind of career in New York, coming back to a much more informal setting where sandwiches, like kind of high-end sandwiches, are the main thing. A lot of other stuff is going on. He's inheriting a whole workforce of people who don't know him, who know his brother, and who don't necessarily agree with everything that he wants to do. Okay, enough babbling from me. Our guest today, our panel today, Sean Murray, stand-up comedian, writer, and the host of the Nobody Asked Sean podcast. Carolyn Payne, actress, comedian, dancer, founder, director, choreographer of Kinetic Dance. Pedro Soto is president and CEO of High Grade Precision Technologies, making a rare non-Star Wars appearance. We're excited about that on The Nose today, too. So maybe before we get going, let's give people a taste, at least an audio taste, of The Bear. This is a series. The sound of this series, I don't know what this clip is going to sound like, but the sound of this series is kind of loud and clattering. There's just noise and compressors and people, rattling dishes around. And it's just and kind of yelling back and forth and calling each other chef. We will come to that. But so you're going to hear Jeremy Allen White. He's the lead as Carmen Carmy Berzatto, Edwin Lee Gibson as Abraham, Lisa Colon Zayas as Tina, and Ayo Edibiri as Sydney. Here we go, A1.
We're implementing a French brigade. Okay.
Carmen, no. I was in a brigade once.
What happened?
Many people died.
CJ?
Okay, it's going to be different. All right, look, this is what real kitchens do. Guys, this is what real teams do, okay? Everybody takes care of their own station. They keep their own side of the street clean. Yeah? Okay.
Okay, so as you may have heard, we are implementing a French brigade. We all heard that, right? So Carmi is the head chef guy. He's the chef de cuisine or the CDC. I am the Sue.
Like hierarchy.
More just like a regular chill-archy. It's more about dividing labor. So because I'm the Sue, right? I just follow orders even if it leads to tension and chaos and resentment and ultimately doesn't work. But yeah, that's what I do. Sorry, I'm the Sue. Tina, you are
no English.
Great, I know you speak English. I've heard you speak. You spoke English 5 seconds ago. That's fine. You're the garde manger. Ibra.
Meat prep.
Yes, which means you are now the chef de partie.
Chef de partie?
Yes.
I accept.
All right, so let's get going on The Bear. Sean, or should I say chef, I know you've been enjoying this quite a bit. Explain what the series does for you, why you've gravitated towards it.
I mean, the thing with this series is it's just it's the perfect blend of charming, funny, mean-spirited, but also like with a heart of gold. It's got an incredible cast. It really does a great job of like selling what it's like to be in a real kitchen. It made me like Jeremy Allen White, who was on Shameless, a show that I despise. That's got to be count for something. Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was just like effective top to bottom at like selling like found family, like recognizing your limitations, recognizing like what you're good at isn't necessarily what's valuable to the situation you're in. Like I just loved it top to bottom.
Yeah, I did too. I found that it's kind of I mean, you can't watch the show and not start addressing other members of your household as chef, because one of the techniques that Carm brings to this formally kind of informal kitchen is the idea that everybody will address everybody else as chef as a matter of respect and a way of team building. And yeah, I mean, Carolyn, in a way, one of the things that some people, possibly even you, may find I don't know, less inviting about this series is you have to go through a lot of stress and trouble to get to the feel-good moments that the way that Sean's talking about it, I think is exactly right. That there's a wonderful heart beating in there somewhere. But boy, the amount of horse poop you got to shovel through to get that is at times kind of stressful.
Yeah, I mean, if by horse poop you mean like footage of raw meat, which like was really challenging for me. So I like this show in theory. I don't even know how to explain what that means, but I like the performances. I like the concept. I like the soundtrack, but the stress of this show now I mean, I've never worked in the food industry. So, this was such an interesting glimpse behind the scenes at something like this. So I was fascinated on that level, but I had trouble watching it because I was just really freaking stressed out by this kitchen scenario, like the messes, the like anxiety, the tensions, like the raw meat, like making of these sandwiches, like the stuff going on between everyone in the kitchen. I don't know. I guess I'm clearly not cut out to work in this world of food service. But yeah, this show had me like really like stress drinking, like stress chugging wine.
Blame the show then. Yeah, no, I mean, look, if anybody who's into smooth sailing, this is not the show for you. This is not a show about smooth sailing. Although, Pedro, one thing that you've been saying as we've been emailing about this is that, and I think this is also very true. I've had a version of the same reaction. In a way, this is an amazing show about food and cooking and about the realities of a kitchen. In another way, a way that we want it to be, it transcends all of that and is very much about team building. How do you maybe even impose a vision on a group of people without them feeling imposed upon, right?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, I love this show. It's very rare. A show comes out of me out of nowhere and I see it and I'm just hooked after the first about 10 minutes. But absolutely, I have never seen a show that, while way more intense and exaggerated and stressful, kind of speaks to the experience that I've had in manufacturing and these high pressure environments. Coming from an IT career, joining the family business, ending up with my own business, a different business, being the outsider, and coming into chaos, controlled chaos, and people who may not necessarily want you or like you, and knowing that you have ideas and knowing that you sometimes can give them across in terrible ways, and that sometimes the idea and the right way may not be the way to do it, that there may be other ways. This show just hits those things shockingly spot on. So I can see people probably directly in the restaurant industry speaking to this, but anyone who comes from any sort of, production oriented, high pressure environment where things need to move, and has worked in these small family businesses, like, just needs to watch this show to see how universal that experience is.
Yeah. And I would say, Carolyn, if you haven't made it all the way through the series yet, don't watch episode 7. Episode 7 is only 20 minutes long. It is some of the most stress I've ever seen packed into 20 minutes. It is, I mean, you really have to sort of get up and walk around at the end of it.
I will say also the episode descriptions are just so deadpan hilarious, because you can see, like, episode one episode, things get out of control. Episode, review, tensions rise, the kitchen's having a bad day. Next episode, things go wrong in the kitchen, Sydney finds solutions. I mean, it is like, yep, that's it. That's what's happening every episode.
Right. So, I'm just noticing that in my notes, the notes that Jonathan McPan prepares for me, you are all identified as chef plus your standard biographies. So, Sean, I don't know. I mean, maybe just pick out one or two performances. I mean, I think another thing that's going on in this series is some amazing acting. I was never a Shameless guy. Well, I'm a Shameless guy, but I never watched Shameless, so I didn't know Jeremy Allen White. Probably the most talked about performance here is and is going to be that of Ebon Moss-Bachrach. He plays a guy named Richie, who was sort of a second banana to the deceased brother and who is still there and is, I don't know, I mean, somebody who creates enormous amounts of chaos and strife on his own and is often hard to take. But the performance is done with just a tremendous amount of conviction. Are there one or two performances, Sean, you'd like to talk about?
I love Io Adebari's performance. I think she's so she's got this she's a small mousy woman, but she brings so much fire and real sort of, she has a great balance of emotion where she's one of the most stressed characters of the entire show, but she also is the one who has to kind of mellow things out. She's the most, maybe outside of Carmy, the most knowledgeable chef and the most skilled and experienced, and she has to kind of bridge the gap between like the high-end cooking world with the type of restaurant they're in. And she does such a great job of like selling like the sort of, I'm overwhelmed and I'm the smartest person in the room, but I have to like give in to the fact that like that doesn't really matter here, and I'm gonna just like have to have egg on my face and like take my lumps just like everyone else. And I think I'm a fan of hers. She's a sketch comedian from out in LA already. She's always great on Hollywood Handbook. But I thought I'd never seen her act before, and I was just taken by her performance.
Yeah, I was knocked out by it too, Sean. And I think another thing that her character does. So Sydney is, I think, the youngest person on the premises or close to it. She is a product of the Culinary Institute of America. So she understands some of the things that Carm is bringing from his New York restaurant life. And there's a lot going on in this series with race and ethnicity, although it isn't talked about all that much. But Carmen and Richie are white. The rest of the kitchen staff, unless you count the guy who comes to fix the video game, the rest of the kitchen staff are people of color. And Sydney's kind of an interesting position because she's got one foot in Carm's world. She is very much a product of the kind of cooking education that he has. She's also black. So there's an expectation that maybe she can be a bridge. But Sean, it kind of doesn't really work that way, actually. She often seems in a very interesting and poignant way, stranded, not really a part of anybody's world. Sean, I was wondering, that was directed to you. I was wondering if you had any reaction to that. Yeah.
Yeah, she exists in a way where like it's fascinating. Like you were saying, like the racial components of it are not really spoken about up front, like so much. But it's like I don't know. I think I think that's what the perfect balance of it. It's like what she sells is that like you can see all of that on her face. Everything that we all understand about the situation is all on her face without ever having to actually like say it out loud. Which is one of the strengths of the show is that a lot of the things that could be sort of, I mean, there's a lot that's just straight up said, like the addiction and all that stuff and the grief of it all. But I think she is the perfect balance point between like the extremes of the show, like the calmness and like the lovingness nature of like this found family and like the Richie of it all.
The Richie of it all, indeed. So, Carolyn, the first thing I need to know is what's going on with you and raw meat? Is that like a ongoing issue? Do you have an issue with raw red meat?
Yeah, I can't touch, like, I spent most of my life as a vegetarian. I now will eat like fish and chicken only, but I can't like see it in its raw form.
Though then this must have been a very, very difficult experience for you. I was also wondering whether you had any thought about any of the performances. We should say that the outside of the kind of kitchen staff, there are a couple of interesting performances. Probably we are all very happy to see Oliver Platt whenever we see Oliver Platt. At least I am. I don't ever not enjoy Oliver Platt. He plays kind of a semi-benevolent loan shark with the nickname Cicero. We also see Abby Elliott, formerly of Saturday Night Live, as the sister of Carmen, the late Mikey. And then there are these cameos. John Bernthal pops up. I almost don't even want to say how he pops up. Maybe that should be a surprise. You also have Joel McHale as a punitive executive chef. You've got Molly Ringwald just kind of out of nowhere talking to the camera at an Al-Anon meeting. I don't know, Carolyn, any of those things kind of work for you? Or I'm also wondering, just as somebody who gravitates towards comedy, whether the stress of the show ever left you room to enjoy the funny parts of it.
I mean, okay, so I'll answer the second part first of this. Despite feeling like intensely stressed out through a lot of this and being disgusted by the meat scenario, I definitely found myself laughing or chuckling at some parts. I think my favorite is in episode 4, the like Xanax bottle spiking the homemade ecto cooler. For some reason, just the concept of that I think is hilarious. And I found myself Googling incessantly how to make ecto cooler at home. You know, because that was a favorite treat of mine. And I feel like Pants McNichol would appreciate that. I think that there are moments, like it does let you breathe, and having a cast that does come from a world of comedy, some of them, and are so, I think the cast is phenomenal. I think every performance is really well done and nuanced, like even just smaller moments. I like Richie, even though he is like the source of chaos and just really, you know, I don't think we're supposed to like him at all, but Ebon Moss-Bachrach, is that his name?
I think so.
Yeah, well, first of all, I spent the whole first episode being like, where do I know this guy from? And then, of course, the one thing that I recognize him from is a Law and Order SVU episode from like a decade ago. With him and his face. But I really, you know, if a show is going to make you stressed out and do it so well that literally I kept having to like get up every time I watched an episode, I was like, oh, I need a break. I think that that's well done I think that's what they're going for. But when the performances are this good that you care, that you're stressed out, not just by the show, but by the scenarios that the characters are in, it is well done for that. And, you know, like I said, there are moments where I was able to kind of, you know, laugh with a little bit of it or enjoy it or Google ecto cooler to calm myself down. But the overall, I mean, and I agree that the actress playing Sydney, I think she steals the show, to be honest.
Yeah, she's tremendous. You know, Pedro, one thing we haven't mentioned, and this is just also part of the setup of the show, as Carmen walks in to take over this restaurant that his brother, who is an addict and now a suicide, has been running, there's essentially a kind of $300,000 hole in the business's finances, which is not explained really fully until the very final episode. But to me, that also creates a whole other stress level. It's stressful enough to run a restaurant, stressful enough to deal with broken compressors and power outages and stuff that's not delivered correctly and people who don't show up in the right frame of mind to do their jobs. But that burden also of just, you just sort of wonder all the time how close they are to hanging up a permanently closed sign.
Absolutely. And again, like as a company that's weathered its way through COVID, that was also ringing true. Just seeing that, having to kind of work on the non-business side of the business, right? All this money, not the stuff that you're doing, right? Not the product going out the door, but suppliers and dealing with people calling for money or people not paying you on time and things like that. I love the way that this show, just like Sean mentioned, like how much it shows how efficient this show is and how much story is being gone. There's not a sense of, except they throw the money of the $300,000 out there, but he owes money here, he owes money that. And it's because you see shots of this just sort of like blasted to handmade spreadsheet that his brother had that's just chaotic and he can't make sense of it. And you're just getting this such a quick intuitive sense of the whole, that Carmy's jumped into and what he has, the job he has to get out of it. And, I think that there's a scene in the Brigade episode where you kind of get this sense, because you're wondering, like, why is he doing this? And where Sydney says, when they're out there and he's having a cigarette and she's just kind of hit her saying like, this brigade was just a mess, saying, we know better, like that we can run things differently. We want to run things not the way that, that the Joel McHale, the awful chefs have taught us to run. We can do this differently, like the power's in our hand. And, I love how it's just the message kind of gets put in there, and just how the show is, 27 to 40 minutes. And I think that most shows would have to take, hour and a half plus to kind of get across the same story.
Yeah, they do. You're talking about COVID. I'll just share one thing that I thought was very funny from the series. Richie, who's just out of control in every possible way. It turns out that Richie has been dealing coke pretty close to the premises, if not actually on the premises. And he explains, I just did it to get us through COVID, which I thought was kind of a typical Richie justifying explanation. I want to say too, watching this series, I'm the cook at our house, and I don't know, sometimes I'm kind of phoning it in. There's no way you can be watching this series and phone in your cooking. I know Pedro's a very avid cook as well, and like last night I was really tired. It's been a long day, and I was standing in Big Y and I was looking at those rotisserie chickens that they've already cooked, and I thought I really want to get one of those, but then I couldn't look Carmy in the face. I got to figure out something that I'm going to actually cook. So Sean, I think you're going to wind up having the last word in this segment, and we don't want to give anything away about the end because the end is a little bit of a stunner, but it also raises the question. It looks like maybe there would be or will be a second season. I don't know if anything has been announced yet, but there's a part of me that thinks, wow, this is 8 really kind of perfectly joined together episodes. This is really a story that has a beginning and an end, and I wouldn't be completely unhappy if they just said, okay, we're going to leave it there. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Oh, Sean, are you up?
I feel like I mean, I would love to spend more time with these characters, like obviously, but it's like I would actually probably prefer just to leave it here. Like it's like this like it's like the further adventures of the bear, you know what I mean? But it wouldn't be like the better adventures of the bear. Like I think you can't really like. I feel like it would just be more of the same. You know what I mean? Like it would just how could we make it even tougher for this gang? You know what I mean? Like I don't know if we need more in order to like you got everything you wanted in 8 episodes, but I also totally understand why FX would be like, yeah, people love this, let's do more.
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, there probably will be more. People do love it. It is
also yay.
Yeah, boo and yay. It is The Bear. You can find it on Hulu. It's worth like doing the 30-day trial for Hulu right now because you can get The Bear and The Old Man, which we'll be talking about next week. But we're going to take a break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about Kim's Convenience.
Okay. Steak breakfast or no hot dog either. Okay. I swing away versus NPR or the Chicago Reader. Okay. This time I hit it to the shortstop using great fielder. He made an error, threw it away like Irene Cara. What a feeling as I'm round and round the second base. I made the third and the guy's better. I made mistakes. Don't worry, guy. I'll try to hit a long drive. I swing away. I don't care if it's ball 5. How many times I gotta tell you he shouldn't be that hot? How many times you thinking giving up?
Blame Canada, with their hockey hullabaloo, and that bitch Anne Murray, too. I thought I should sing it because it is Canada Day, and we are, and I have nothing against Anne Murray. That's just the way the song goes. But it's we are talking about Kim's Convenience, which is set in Toronto. Today is Canada Day. I don't know what that means. It's one of those Canadian holidays that it would take 5 minutes for them to explain to you, but happy Canada Day. We are talking about this series, which I believe has finished its fifth season and is not going forward. We'll also be talking a little bit about why that is. This is the story of an immigrant family. They are Korean. They run a convenience store. There's an Uma and an Appa, a mother and a father. There are two more assimilated next generation children. And so that kind of quartet makes up the beating heart of the show. In many ways, I think it's also very heavily focused. If it's focused on any one person, I could be wrong about this, actually. I'll withdraw that. But with Jin Yoon as Uma and Andrea Bang as Janet, Paul Sun Young Hung as Appa, Andy Yu as a job applicant in this particular clip we're about to play. I'll say something about this afterwards. But this is, I believe, from the first episode. And what's happened is that the daughter of the family is single in a way that seems to make at least the mother uncomfortable. And so she is getting people from their church to show up as job applicants at the convenience store in a kind of clumsy attempt at matchmaking. Here we go, B1.
What? Not even trying. If you don't mingle, you stay single. These guys know that I'm the job. No, you should say thank you. You don't know yet, but Oma doing you a big favor.
Ah, what's that happen?
Oh, the usual. Oma's ruining my life.
Ay, what you doing?
Helping find a boyfriend.
Ay, Janet is not a baby anymore. Huh? She's a now full balloon grown woman. She don't need your help finding boyfriend.
Dad, thank you.
How can she have a boyfriend when she take over a store?
I'm not taking over the store.
What's wrong with the store?
Nothing's wrong with the store, but
Then take over.
How can she take over a store when she have a baby?
You have a baby?
What? No. After she married, she had many babies.
Maybe we'll come back another time.
Let's be clear. I'm not taking over the store, and I'm not having many babies, okay?
All right. And this family kind of specializes in that kind of lightning fast argument. I think I am going to say that in many ways, although it's an ensemble piece, Paul Sun Young Lee as Appa is very much the focus. He is somebody who is wrestling really kind of with two cultural gaps. He is both Korean and not really fully assimilated. And he's also old enough so that he misses other things. A term like Netflix and chill hasn't necessarily sunk in with him. It's not clear for which reason, but he misuses it, obviously, in a very funny way. All right, so Pedro, you've been with this series for quite a while. Say a little bit more about it and kind of why it does whatever it does for you.
You know, it's a show where in the world of prestige TV, which is long and so sort of multi-arc and intense, it's a show that is, it's just so sweet and lighthearted, and the characters are so, there's no villain, there's no antagonist. It's really about a family kind of making its way together, and it's just so, like you said, it's lightning fast. It's hilarious. The premises of each episode can sometimes go to absurdity, which only makes it funnier. And it's really something where even just the sense that it's in Canada and kind of just the, for us Northeast liberals, seeing the world as we wish it would be sometimes in terms of the stuff that happens, on the sidelines in the show and kind of how everyone gets along. I think it's really a show which I enjoy, and it's sort of an escape without it being something which is like sci-fi or something out of there. It's a really great, sweet show to watch, and grabbing a half hour to feel better and watching it and feeling better is just what sometimes you need.
Right. It's, I think, kind of important that it's in Toronto. This is sort of back of the envelope stuff, but so don't hold me to this. But I believe Toronto is pretty unusual in having a population more than 50% of which is born in another country. And it's also its population of color, I think, is bigger than 50%. It's really kind of an interestingly blended place, and the show works off of that. It's also, the show has had an unusual trajectory. It started out as a play that actually had to win a contest even to get into the Toronto Fringe Festival. The play then play has the same name, by the way. The play then became more of a hit. I think it played off Broadway. This all started in 2011. So, and we should say that actually that play is now about to appear to be staged at the Westport Playhouse. And I'm looking for the information about that, and I can't find it, but I'll give it to you in just a second. So, yeah, Carolyn, so not so much raw meat in this series, maybe in several different senses of that idea. So how did it work for you?
I really enjoyed this. I could see this being a show that I like revisit or just kind of put on as one of my like chill shows when I'm trying to get stuff done and just kind of enjoy. It has that right mix of like kind of warm and fuzzy, but also, fun and watchable. It never enters that kind of like cheesy warm and fuzzy. It's just a nice, easy watch. And again, like really solid performances. I only got I started this like a couple days ago and binged the first like 3 seasons. So that's how consumable it is. You really can just kind of hit play, and it's the kind of show that Netflix is going to be like, are you sure you're still watching this? And you're like, yeah, I sure as hell am. So I'm grateful for the nose for making me watch this.
All right, I found it now. The play runs this month at the Westport Country Playhouse, starting next Tuesday. I think there's 14 performances. So, Sean, I'm not even sure I know whether you liked this series or not. So let's start there.
Hated it. It was terrible. No, I liked it. It was very like Chef Carolyn said. It's pleasant. It doesn't. It's very watchable. It's looking at characters that you don't often see in media. I mean, as we go going along further into I guess further into history, but also further into like the streaming age, you're going to see more opportunities for people of color of different backgrounds to get more opportunities. But I love that we're seeing characters in a type of show that we've seen before, but not not with dynamics that we've seen before necessarily in terms of like what they represent in like culturally. I love that about it. It's not my favorite sitcom ever, but like it's super watchable. And I only got into 3 seasons as well, so I didn't get to see the part where the Avengers recruit. But I'm hoping to get there in a couple days.
Right. So yeah. There was a point I was going to make, and it's now slipped my mind. But yeah, the series. Well, we should just talk a little bit about the fact that Pedro, the series has kind of run aground a little bit in the sense that it was initially launched by the playwright, who is Korean American, and he eventually left. And there really has been kind of a fair amount of discord among cast members about the direction of the series, and they've been unusually open lately about airing that discord. So given how much you love the series, I'm sure you're a little bit sad about the fact that it's probably not ending the right way.
Yeah, I mean, I think the last season, which came out last year, ended because the creators of the show decided to leave, and rather, I guess the cast was sort of advocating to keep it going, but they shut it down. And once that happened, the cast did come out pretty vocally saying that they really felt in a lot of ways that their kind of perspective and their backgrounds and representation wasn't necessarily being taken into account. And as the series progressed, that things moved more into caricature and moved more into, kind of white people's visions of what kind of the Korean immigrant experience was, rather, because the writer's room was apparently mostly white. And I think that it is disappointing to see that. And you can with that lens in mind, when you're watching later seasons, you can kind of see those tropes a little bit stronger. There's an LA Times, I think, article that I was looking at before this that was talking about, goes deeper into this about some certain episodes that the cast was actually sort of, vocally saying like, hey, like, don't do this, and they kind of did it anyways. So, seeing that, I think was a little bit disheartening. I think it doesn't take away from, I think, a lot of the spirit of the show, especially in earlier seasons. I think later seasons, like I said, it gets a little, you can kind of see the wheels starting to kind of hit some grounds as they kind of start to repeat and run and do things that I guess even apparently the cast thought was problematic.
Yeah, I mean, Carolyn, there are times where this series reminds me of almost kind of a Korean honeymooners. I mean, there's sort of and that's probably the part of it that I enjoy the least. There's a fair amount of bickering that just kind of goes on between these two protagonists, mom and dad, Uma and Appa, and I'm just a person who just doesn't find that endlessly entertaining. But there are also moments where, and there's one towards the end of the first season, it's an episode about a singing contest at the church. Some of the members of this family are devout Christians, but the mom, Uma, also has this kind of sworn enemy, this highfalutin woman named Mrs. Park. She is going to be showing off her chops at the church, and so Uma decides to kind of get the family, or at least some of the family, back together for a little sort of Korean traditional song harmonized. And Carolyn, I don't know, but I don't want to talk about the twist that's in there. There's a little tiny twist that comes up during their performance. But I was getting verklempt. I was getting kind of choked up. And that says something, I think, for a series like this to really be able to move you that way.
Well, I think I think that the core of this show is this family, the family dynamic. And I kind of love their bickering because it reminds me of my family. I feel like my family, like, we definitely love each other, but there is a lot of bickering and arguing that's at the heart of like every holiday for us. So, or even anytime we're in a room together. So I found that like identifiable, and like maybe that's why I felt so at home with this show. I was like, yep, that's exactly how it is to spend, 30 minutes with my family. So I think that, when you have a show that can relate across, across different cultures and, different, the fact that it's like set, a lot of it is really set in this convenience store. And as we know with like sitcoms, that can be challenging. I mean, we go outside of that a lot, but I just felt like it's really, I think that, it kind of hit, at least in the early episodes. Now I'm curious to see what happens as this shift happens that you guys talk about on their, on the production end. But I think the show really hit like a really nice formula that, as I said at first, like, it's warm and fuzzy. There's something really sweet about this show. I can't honestly say that I like got verklempt as you did, but I definitely, you like this family, you like these people, you relate to them. And I hate to say wholesome, because I feel like that just feels like nobody wants to watch anything wholesome. Like, we definitely want like much more like HBO kind of like slimy, swarmy, scary TV. But there is a place for a show like this. And it, it does kind of have that vintage. I get like that, like kind of like honeymooners. It feels like a throwback to a time where we just did sitcoms that were about like nice people and are nice.
So we're going to wrap up right around here, Sean, but it looks like you're getting the last word again. Although I want to introduce kind of a Papulian through line here. I think one of the things that's kind of interesting about that maybe joins these two series that we're talking about here is the sense that these are places, both the beef restaurant in Chicago and the convenience store in Toronto, where we're customers. We're the people we're at the cash register asking why they don't have macaroni cheese on the shelf that day, or why, why my favorite dish isn't available, or it's not coming out as fast as I want it to. And there is a kind of sense that this is the unsung world. These are these places, they're not glamorous places at all, that we go to and we just sort of get what we need. And maybe, I mean, one of the things I think that Kim's Convenience does really well is have these kind of quirky Canadian kind of customers who come in and engage the proprietor in kind of pointless conversations about various things. But I kind of like the idea of shows that show us the world behind the kind of front-facing businesses that we use all the time.
I enjoy that too. And honestly, I wish it doesn't seem like the shows like this have given the average citizen any more respect for customer service, because I still see people treating people in the service industry like garbage for some reason. But I appreciate that about it. It's sort of reminiscent of like what I loved about Bourdain is that he had almost, I wouldn't say as much, I'd probably say more appreciation for the sort of everyday sort of street food and like home cooked food that we would get than he did for fine dining. And he would, you know, especially like in Parts Unknown and such, he would like make an effort to like show us the people behind the stuff that we appreciated, that wasn't necessarily appreciated by like culture at large. And I love that about both of these shows is that like there's people who making these things for you, and like there's a whole, like there's a lot going on in their lives, you know, like to get that Chicago beef on your on your plate, it took a lot more than you realized.
That's beautifully put. Thanks so much for that. All right, we'll take a quick break and we are going to come back and make some recommendations. We're back. Time to say thanks. Thanks to Kat Pastor. She's our technical producer. Jonathan McPants is the producer of Nose episodes. Thanks to both of them. We've got a terrific panel today. They're going to make some recommendations to you. Carolyn Payne, why don't you get us going?
Okay. Well, I am just coming off a really busy couple of weeks. And even though I said that The Bear stresses me out, apparently I do enjoy watching some things that stress me out. Because my recommendation is the ever ridiculous, but a little bit stressful, Real Housewives Ultimate Girls Trip Ex-Wives Club. I know this sounds ridiculous, but if you're at all any sort of fan of Real Housewives, basically what Bravo has done is plucked housewives who are no longer part of the show of their city anymore and sent them up to the Berkshires on a week-long getaway and filmed it. And it's just so sloppy. And these women are wild. And it just, I mean, if you're just looking for something like I was, just to kind of decompress, kick off some summer, you know, I love some good, crappy reality TV. Real Housewives, Ultimate Girl Trip, Ex-Wives Club. It's it.
That's the whole title? It's all of those things?
Yes, it is all those things. They had really, you know, I believe there's some sort of hashtag with all the initials and everything. So like RHG, I don't even know.
Right. I probably won't be watching it. I don't know why I'm asking follow-up questions. Just for that listener who might be out there who's interested.
And I would love to discuss this with you.
That's right. Okay, so Pedro, why don't you go next? What are you going to recommend to us?
Okay, I've got two recommendations. If you do get your 30 days on Hulu and watch The Bear, then you also do need to watch Rami, which is something in the vein of the show like Master of None, where it's kind of a comedian talking about, or who's starring in a show kind of about his life, and he is a Muslim in New Jersey who is just navigating being a 20-something-year-old Muslim. It's, I think, 2 seasons. I don't know if there's going to be a third, but it's kind of in the same vein of The Bear, and kind of Kim's Convenience. Pull out some of the stress, keep in a bunch of the angst, and keep in the comedy. And so definitely watch Rami. And then the second one, yes, it's geeky. Yes, it's Marvel. Miss Marvel, which just is currently running on Disney Plus. It does run as one of these typical Marvel series with like the superhero and everything. However, it is from again, it's a Muslim from New Jersey, a young Muslim from Pakistan who discovers she has superpowers. But the show is I think I talked about this a few weeks ago about how important representation is. It's just such a show that's written from this perspective and not from this outsider perspective about what it would be if there were someone from this community who gains the superpowers and what happens to her and kind of how her life is more broadly. It's a teenage show, so it has that as well, which I think makes it kind of fun. But I'm really enjoying it, and so I do recommend it. I think it's actually out of all of the series that have come out on Disney, it's probably right behind WandaVision in terms of it being my favorite.
Wow. So I'm being told by McPants that Christopher Storer, who is the creator of The Bear, is also a showrunner on Rami. So there you go. And then there is going to be a third season. All right. So, and I'm also reminded that whenever I talk to Carolyn about the kinds of things that she recommends, I'm sitting right across the glass from me is Kat Pastor, who actually would be very interested in watching, if she hasn't already, Real Housewives Fire Walk with Me or whatever that was called. All right. So, so Sean, you have the floor.
I would like to recommend Marlon James's Dark Star trilogy. There's only 2 books out so far, but Marlon James, author of the Man Booker Prize winning Brief History of Seven Killings, which is an amazing book. But he writes this series that is a African sci-fi fantasy story in a sort of a fictional, semi-fictional Africa that tells the story of like a would-be king who's kidnapped, and the people tasked with recovering him for the Queen Regent, who is his mother. And both books run parallel to each other, and they tell 2 different characters' stories and how the stories sort of intersect and differ from each other. Like they're 2 different accounts of the sort of a Rashomon approach to storytelling, and it's just one of the most imaginative and amazing series I've read, and it's one of the only fantasy series that I've ever read that's like has a fantasy take that's not Eurocentric, and it's so African, and Marlon James' style is so uncompromising. I just find it amazing. I just finished the second book, which is called Moonwitch Spider King last night, and I thought it was amazing. And the first book is called Black Leopard, Red Wolf. So that's my recommendation. All right.
So I'm going to recommend a book 2 of them. I'm a little embarrassed now because it's not quite as literary and exalted as the work of Marlon James. But because I got so obsessed with The Old Man and I can't stop talking about it, I started to read another book by Thomas Perry, who wrote the novel on which The Old Man is based. This is a much older work. It's called Metzger's Dog. It is one of the fan favorites. People who like Thomas Perry especially like this book. And it sort of highlights something that he likes to do, which is, first of all, suggest that the American political and especially intelligence establishment is corrupt and pitiless and horrible. But he likes protagonists who are not necessarily nice people. They're just kind of interesting people. This is kind of a heist story. One of my favorite things about it. The other thing Thomas Perry clearly likes are dogs. Dogs almost steal the show on The Old Man. Metzger's Dog, the title refers to a cat. The cat's name is Dr. Henry Metzger, and he is never referred to as anything else except Dr. Henry Metzger, his full name and title, and a dog who comes into the world of these criminals who already own this cat. So it's Metzger's Dog. It's not a literary masterpiece. We will be talking about The Old Man on The Nose next week. Thanks to our wonderful panel. Thanks to Pedro Soto, Sean Murray, and, of course, Carolyn Payne. We'll see you next week.
Alderberry, Woodbury, hitting on New Britain, Vernon, I already said that one, Avon, Farmington, yeah.